Good morning, everyone. Great summit first day yesterday, and honored to be here to, the first keynote of the day with my colleague, ShiSh Shridhar from Microsoft. My name is Nadhan. I'm the Global Chief Architect Leader at Red Hat, and ShiSh is the worldwide retail. Why don't you go ahead?
Hi, good morning. So I'm the global lead for retail within Microsoft for Startups. Work with innovative startups in really helping transform companies out there with startup innovation.
Yep. So today's session, the topic you saw was, it takes a startup mindset to architect open innovation on the edge. That's a lot of buzzwords right there. And what we are going to do is unpack each one. What does that mean? What does being a startup mean? What does open source mean? Innovation. What does edge mean? That's what the next 30 minutes are going to be about. So let's start with, what do we mean by a startup mindset, ShiSh, from your standpoint?
Well, one of the things about startup mindset is really the ability to work with new business models and be agile and really innovate very quickly with the fail fast mentality. And a lot of times we're kind of looking at these three different elements. You have one, the ability to find the right business model very quickly with fail fast, and to do that, really take the assumptions that you have, the early assumptions, and to test it out. And to do that, really the build phase is what a lot of companies look at, and to build the MVP. And for a lot of organizations, and Microsoft and Red Hat started off as startups. And in 1975, for example, Microsoft was a tiny company with a handful of employees experimenting with the market, building the MVP, and iterating from there. So that iteration and the continuous loop is a big element of the startup mentality. And a lot of organizations are learning today from startups and bringing that mindset into the organization to say, how can we become more innovative? How can we drive innovation within the organization? And that ability to build really build the MVP and then go into really measuring, learning from that, what needs to change, and running it against real customer environments and then changing and measuring, learning from that, and then going back again to build the next version. So that whole entire loop is what a lot of companies are experimenting with, and this is pretty much what all startups do to drive innovation.
Yeah, you mentioned Microsoft. That it took me to a throwback moment. I was talking to Bob Young, one of the co-founders of Red Hat, going all the way back, more than 25 years back, when Red Hat started as a startup as well. But I want to make a point here, ShiSh. I don't think we are saying that it is this kind of a mindset is only for startups. Really, it is about for any enterprises, even more so. Go ahead.
Exactly, and I think this is something that enables every organization to become innovative, really going through that loop, and every large organization that I'm working with is adopting this mindset, startup mindset, and being innovative, fail fast very quickly, and doing that continuous loop. So absolutely, it's not just about startups. Startups live that world, and a lot of mature companies are adopting it and driving that culture within the organization. Absolutely.
So I tend to walk the curb. I'm going to make a bold statement here. No matter who you are, here or on the live stream, the startup mindset applies to you. It should apply to you. So let's start there. Talking about startup, when we think about open source, which Red Hat is all about, we learn every day that we actually work in the open source community. What does working there mean? We actually have employees who are paid to be lead contributors in the community. Life starts upstream at Red Hat. Life starts in the open source. We collaborate, we share, and we collaborate to solve problems. And we work with our customers, our partners, our competitors. That's how open source works. When I take the Uber, and sometimes they ask me, who do you work for? What do you do? And so on. And when I talk about open source software, I say it is like Wikipedia for software. Really anyone. So I see a fine cohort of students right here in the front row from University of Missouri Science and Technology. I came to know of a city that they are from. I couldn't, Rolla, is it? Rolla, Missouri, that's where they are from, they can contribute to open source, and they do. It's the world's largest research and development platform. That's the culture that open source is about. And honestly, if you're thinking open source is about software, I won't say you're wrong, but it is more than that. It is really about that culture of collaboration, which is a fine foundation for innovation. So you see a pattern here: startup, open source, leading up to innovation. But it is not just me talking about Red Hat, talking about open source. What's the Microsoft perspective, ShiSh?
This is actually really interesting, and to a point where it's really nice to see Red Hat and Microsoft on the same stage. I've been in Microsoft for 25 years, and there was a time when Microsoft was very proprietary. And around 2010, we opened up to open source. We went really big in open source. Today, we are one of the biggest contributors to open source after the acquisition of GitHub, and also contributions to the Linux Foundation, OSI, all of those. And I've been really excited about what we've been doing internally in terms of open source and all the contributions we do, as well as externally. The partnership with Red Hat, to me, was a big moment as well, where we're going open. We are embracing that open source community, and at the same time, what we find is because of that, we're driving innovation in a big way. All of the startups that I work with are excited about working with open source on the Microsoft platform, working with Red Hat on the Microsoft platform as well. So that's, again, driving a lot of things for them. One is they're able to attract talent. A lot of the developers out there that work in open source, they can work with them. Recruiting new talent becomes easier. Contributing to the open source community is, again, really supported by Microsoft as well. And that cycle where they contribute, attract more talent because of the contributions they're making, is also enabling a lot of innovation by itself. And that's kind of an interesting element. Today, we have about 60% of everything that we run on the Azure cloud running on Linux. That is a huge number, more than half. And that's kind of a very interesting change as well, where more than half of our business is Linux.
Yep. When I joined Red Hat many years back, I would not have imagined, standing on the same stage with Microsoft. And it was a hallmark moment when Satya Nadella was on stage at our summit, at Red Hat Summit, with our CEO then, Jim Whitehurst, to announce the Azure Red Hat OpenShift platform. So the Red Hat OpenShift container platform runs on Azure, and it's a service provided by Microsoft. It takes collaboration, not just between individuals, between companies, for innovation to happen. So again, startup, open source, collaboration, you will see the pattern. We will complete the title walkthrough here. So if you think back as to, where has innovation started? Where did it originate? Whether you think about containers and analytics and DevOps, it all started with the open source community. That's where the innovation really happens because, it's open. And you can actually share different ideas. And truth be told, there are 1 million projects going on in the open source community at any point of time. But don't you believe that, every single project sees the light of day? There is a fail fast approach. Therefore, what gets adopted eventually is really ones where people see, traction. They can actually see outcomes, and there is a purpose behind this. So there is an automatic validation of what projects need to become products. That's what we do in Red Hat. The enterprise-grade open source software that we provide, we make that transition from project to product so that companies can actually rely on the, mission-critical applications can run on said software. So we actually did a survey of our customers, about 2,000 or so, and it turns out that the enterprise open source, 80% of leaders actually expect to increase the adoption of enterprise open source, but notice that this is for emerging technologies. It's not just for the solutions of today. Open source is a path to continuous innovation, not just for your initiative this year, but you are on that journey with the world at large on how we can co-innovate, right? And that's why you see 80% of leaders focusing on emerging technologies. What will be products, say, 2 years from now, 5 years from now? And when we did a double click on that, the 71% actually said that the focus is on edge. Again, startup, open source, innovation leading up to edge. I think you have an anecdote or two around the edge idea.
Yeah,
ShiSh.
and I was kind of reading this Gartner report that kind of said 10% of all data today is not created in the cloud, in the centralized environments. And by 2025, 75% of that data will not be created in the cloud. It'll actually be created on the edge. So the edge is gaining a lot of prominence, a lot of relevance in use cases. And today, everything that I'm seeing, all of the emerging technologies that is coming out, for example, Web3 is entirely based on the concept of decentralization. And that's where we're going to see a lot of edge adoption. The other thing that we're also going to see is, for example, unified commerce, where there's a lot of capabilities that are on the edge. The metaverse is, again, another aspect where we're going to see edge capabilities and Web3 happen. So as a result, we're going to see this huge explosion that's happening on the edge. And of course, the technologies that enable managing all of these, the devices, the data, all of that become important as well.
Yep. So when it comes to technologies, what we see when working with customers, you need choice. You need the choice to run on the different environments, including edge. So platforms that are open really go a long way. And if you stop by our booth, you will actually see what this slide is talking about. There are different options that we provide with our container platform for running on the edge, not just in the cloud and not just in the data centers. This way, it's a continuous, consistent platform, open platform that you can actually leverage to access data generated on the edge. And there are different configurations that you can get more details on at our booth. So at this point, ShiSh, I'm going to ask you, so we talked about startup, we talked about open source, innovation, technology, and so on. But let's start relating this to real life. After all, we can talk all day long about technology, but if it doesn't impact my quality of life, frankly, I couldn't care less, ShiSh.
Exactly. And like I mentioned, I think there's a lot happening on the edge, and the data is moving to the edge. The use cases that we are seeing light up, and I work with retail, but I'll talk about the other industries as well. In the retail world, for example, and in general for users, the ability to provide, recommendations in real time. When I look at a product on a shelf, and based on my history, based on my preferences, I want to have that just-in-time recommendation happen to me. Here's what would be good. All those kind of low latency kind of situations where we need to be able to react very quickly. There is a lot of use cases like that in retail, in other industries that drive edge-based technologies. What you see here on the slide is actually what I'm seeing a lot of in the retail world. One is stores being deployed in containers, stores being deployed autonomous. So autonomous, if I look at autonomous cars, autonomous stores, autonomous operation of restaurants, autonomous factory floors, there's a lot of capabilities in robotics. And the capabilities here require low latency actions. And that's where the edge really comes in. So in this case, we have, autonomous stores on college campuses. We have autonomous stores, again, in train stations and airports. All of this, there's so much happening. I walk around, I pick up an item, put it back. Again, there is AI that is detecting, there's cameras that is detecting what I'm doing and responding to that very quickly. And all of this is driving a huge amount of edge capabilities.
But like you said, ShiSh, it's not just retail.
Right.
Right? So there are other industries where, edge it is frankly cross-industry.
It is. And like I mentioned, factory floors is another aspect where, automation in factories is driving a lot of edge capabilities. It's driving a lot of robotics. I'm seeing robotics being a huge element over the last couple of months, where across many industries, especially manufacturing, we're seeing financial services. There's a lot of edge capabilities in retail banking, in particular, in customer engagement in banks. That's, again, another aspect of it. We're seeing edge capabilities also happen in logistics. So in delivery, within the trucks itself, and able to track things, be able to respond to changes very quickly. So again, there's a lot of edge capabilities in place. Mobile is driving a lot of that as well. So across all of these industries, we are seeing an increase in this, and that's also, enabling, or rather, if I look back at what Gartner said, 75% of all that data will be generated in the edge. I strongly believe that that is going to be the case.
Yeah. So if you're not already, you should actually follow both of us on LinkedIn. Here is why. We have Chris Adams would testify to this. He has told us multiple times. Our dialogue about this talk really started, weeks back on LinkedIn, and we have been having, back and forth conversation on this. And here is what we got a kick out of. Here we are in Bentonville, Arkansas, and we got this note from, somebody down there in Australia saying, hey, we are doing just that. We are a startup. We are in healthcare. We are using Red Hat OpenShift on Microsoft Azure, and that's what our platform is. Now, I'm sure you're curious who that is. And that's Hard AI. And on this, that is actually Luca Dykes, the managing director of Hard AI. And the quote kind of speaks for itself. Hard AI is a startup in Southern Australia, and they are actually working with the health system to provide a platform around data management for edge devices and the data centers for across the South Australian company ecosystem of healthcare providers. And Luca actually has done a podcast with us also on how they are leveraging the Red Hat OpenShift platform on Microsoft Azure Cloud to actually do. Now, startups don't start unless they see a market. There is a niche play, and there is white space that they want to address. So this is, it's kind of the validation of our talk here, where you need a startup mindset that global enterprises should adopt, and then you need that open innovation, that ecosystem, and Edge is kind of the next platform, if you will, or the next where you can best innovate, because it is the edge devices that actually interact directly with us, the individual consumer. That's really what I had in closing, but ShiSh, your thoughts, any other stories that you want to share?
Yeah, there's a couple. In fact, on our website, I was looking at all the joint case studies between Red Hat and Microsoft, and I was pretty impressed with the number in there. One of them was actually Lufthansa, where they're doing a lot of collaboration around aircraft maintenance, and they're using container technology, and Red Hat OpenShift is a big element of that. So there's a lot of innovation happening there. But the one story that I actually liked is from France, from a retailer, Franprix. What they were looking at is they were going through a whole digital transformation and unifying their physical stores with online. So they were going unified commerce. They wanted to ensure that the inventory they had in all of their thousands of stores was, in sync with online, all of that. And they used OpenShift as one of the technologies for that. They also wanted to be able to, when someone goes in, picks up an item, it is automatically updated online. People know what products are available, exactly the amounts on the shelf in the store, online. They could order pretty much anywhere. So that synchronization of all of that was possible because of the technologies in play. There's OpenShift. So Red Hat and Microsoft played a big part in that. And to me, I think the biggest takeaway is I'm working with an entire ecosystem of startups out there. And these startups are innovating very quickly. They are adopting some of the new technologies, and open source enables them to do that. Open source enables them to get the right talent. The open source enables them to contribute back. And the startups are actually innovating, and then I work with retailers and other companies out there that are collaborating with startups to drive innovation or accelerate the innovation that is happening within the companies. So that collaboration with the startup ecosystem is a huge way in which innovation can happen, in which open source actually becomes a big part of every organization through startup collaboration.
So a story from Southern Australia, a story from France. Frankly, I think there is a call to action for Bentonville. We need a success story here, with the startup mindset. So what do I mean by that? I mean, it's not just about the attire, head to toe. You see me all decked up in Red Hat brand, including the socks. And, it's really about the mindset. And let's flag off with that to see if you have any questions from the audience. I think we have a few minutes. So any questions? I don't know how we do this. Raise your hand. And happy to take, we want this to be interactive, so ShiSh and I did plan it to at least leave a few minutes for questions. Got a startup mindset? Speak up. Yes, we have one at least. Go ahead. So I would respond, great question, thank you for that. When we generally talk about digital transformation and modernization, all these buzzwords, there is this underlying notion that it's about technology. To the point of this question, it's really about that mindset. It is really about the workforce being open to actually changing the way that, we do things every day, from an IT perspective. So one of the big challenges really is that change. The fact that we're going to do something new. Workforce being in that comfort zone. Hey, if it seemingly works some way or the other, why bother change? And the startup mindset is really about, addressing new business models, new customer segments. Like ShiSh was saying in the beginning, trying something new. And that resistance to change is the first challenge that comes to mind. ShiSh?
I totally agree with what you're saying, Nadhan. It is, technology is not the lead in this conversation. It is primarily the mindset and the culture of the company to adopt innovation and adopt the startup mindset. The technology is the latter half of it, but without that culture change happening, it's difficult to do that.
I would also add, companies ought to give employees, the workforce, the freedom to do things differently, try new things. And that's not always an environment that I find across the world. So the more companies are more accommodative of it's okay to fail, it's okay to try something new. That's not on you. And not trying that is on us, that as in the company. That is a mindset that actually really helps fuel the startup mindset. It played a huge factor. Now, in a different way. So let me explain what it did not do, okay? To be perfectly blunt about it, when I got the text about IBM acquiring Red Hat, I got a text that Sunday afternoon, 2 or 3 years back, like, are you now Blue Hat? Are you now Purple Hat? And so on, right? Hey, right? So nothing really has changed from that perspective. To IBM's credit, IBM wants Red Hat to stay the way we were and the way we are because that's their pride. As in, take a look at our business unit, Red Hat, where the open innovation still continues. So that way, Red Hat is still Red Hat, and so that way it did not change. Now, the IBM acquisition did give us an opening. So Red Hat is, it's in like 35 countries. I may be off on the number a little, but IBM is like 3 times that in the number of countries that they are in. So imagine you're shopping at your nearby store, and then you walk into the Sam's Club warehouse or something, right? That's the type of feeling that we get when, holy cow, these are the different IBM customers ecosystem that we get access to. So we are not only able to do what we do every day, but we are able to do that in a much, much broader world thanks to IBM. So innovation is flourishing in the, even with the IBM acquisition. I think edge, innovation, all of that startup mindset is music to our ears, and music is what I am hearing. That's our cue that we are done here. Thank you.
Thank you very much.